Japan takes military officers from the 10 ASEAN countries on a 4-day tour of the South China Sea. We'll be asking what Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is trying to achieve in reaching out to these countries. And with bike sharing having taken China by storm, I'll be asking the Chief Product Officer of one of the market leaders if this Chinese reinvention is likely to have a global impact. Welcome to The Point. I'm Li Xin. Japan invited officers from the 10-member ASEAN bloc on a 4-day tour of the South China Sea on its Itsumo helicopter carrier this week. It is the latest sign of Japan showing its military prowess and influence in the region. The helicopter carrier is Japan's largest post-war naval vessel. It was dispatched in May from the port of Yokosuka and is currently on a 3-month tour of the South China Sea. A Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson has said Japan is stirring up troubles and creating splits in the South China Sea. If the Japanese side insists on doing so or even attempts to get militarily involved in the South China Sea, harm China's sovereignty and security and heighten regional tensions, the Chinese side will definitely take firm actions in response. Separately, ASEAN military representatives attended a 3-day event in Japan to observe the Self-Defense Forces military disaster relief drills. And last week, Japan held a military technology seminar with representatives from Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia and Singapore. So what has driven Japan to strengthen its military ties in such an intensive way with regional members? And how will this series of actions impact on the stability of Asia and Pacific? I'm joined by Aina Tangen, our current affairs commentator, and Dr. Luo Yongkun, an associate professor at China Institute of Contemporary International Relations. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. First of all, Aina, what has driven Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to carry out such a military diplomacy?
Well, I think there's 3 issues you can point to. One, this is part of the U.S.-Japan kind of blockade of China. They're trying to show military might. Second, this is part of his ongoing things to remilitarize Japan. And third, he's looking for arms sales. Japan is not doing well. Economically, he needs to do something to boost it. Last year, in 2016, Japan lifted its embargo on selling its defense technologies. And I think this is a large part of what's happening right now.
Dr. Luo, what's your take on the kind of goals that Japan wants to achieve by all of these military cooperation it is carrying out with regional neighbors?
I think Japan wants to mislead ASEAN countries. Why I say mislead the ASEAN countries? Because China now and the ASEAN countries, we have very close partnerships. But Japan, even the US, they come to the South China Sea just to tell ASEAN countries that China is a destabilizer in the sea, so I must cooperate with ASEAN countries to balance China, something like that. But in fact, China is not a destabilizer, but Japanese by misleading ASEAN countries to push forward the security cooperation with ASEAN countries.
Now, the Maritime Self-Defense Force classifies the Itsumo warship as a helicopter carrier. Some analysts are saying this is an aircraft carrier. What are the differences, Aina?
Well, in terms of length, it's 248 meters versus the Liaoning, which is China's first one, which is 303 meters. But the difference is that, and this is what the Japanese always point to, is that they don't have the lift that's capable of taking aircraft below decks. But if you look on the actual aircraft carrier, it's a different type of technology. It's flat. It's not the ski slope type of situation. They do have cutouts where lifts either are for taking the helicopters down or could be put in later on. They do not have a catapult system, but they do have the F-35A, which is a strike force fighter that the U.S. developed. There's a variation of that called the B, which is a short takeoff and landing vehicle, which could easily be accommodated on this kind of ship. You can save fuel by launching it conventionally, and then you can have it come back and land in a short vertical landing pad.
Dr. Luo, so is this really a helicopter destroyer or is really an aircraft carrier in disguise?
I think it is really a destroyer because it is constructed for the anti-submarine warfare and also for search and rescue operations. And it is the largest warship for Japanese maritime self-defense forces. So I think it is a destroyer. But the point is, It is very dangerous for Japanese government to develop the helicopter carrier into an aircraft carrier. It is very dangerous and very risky for the region.
What are the possibilities there? Are we seeing signs that this is where eventually Japan wants to go, Aina?
They're showing a lot of flexing their muscles. I think part is to reinvigorate their defense industry. Remember, when you have an internal defense industry, it's not like the U.S. The U.S. spreads the cost of its development by selling arms around the world. That's why we're the largest arms seller, in addition to else. Japan sees this as an opportunity. They would love to sell things to ASEAN, especially because of the tensions that are developed between the U.S., Russia, and China. They would be, and also run, their technology is very good, very, very advanced. They work with the highest grade metals. They have obviously all of the technology and software capabilities built in. But I think it is, and I would agree with my colleague, a very dangerous game. Your desire to sell weapons into a volatile situation is not going to be the answer for, quote, peaceful future.
Dr. Law, Japan might have the intention to sell weapons. What about the needs of these countries that we're talking about to acquire latest weapons? What are their security needs at this moment?
In fact, for ASEAN countries, most of them are the smaller nations, so they really need the militarization or the modernization of their military. So they really need the weapons from the big powers like Japan, the US or China. But the problem is ASEAN countries want militarization, but they do not want the risk or the challenge of the regional security. So they, on the one hand, they welcome the military, welcome the weapons from the big powers. On the other hand, they just seek the balance of power. So we can find that the ASEAN countries, they not only buy the weapons from Japan, they also buy the weapons from South Korea, from US, from Russia, from China. So they just want to balance. They just want to maintain peace and stability and the balance of the strategy in the region.
Yeah.
But at the heart of this, in every article that you see out there, they're talking about the $5 trillion worth of shipping that goes through that area every year. But quite frankly, that is the lifeline of China. China is a country that has to import resources and export value-added goods. So the greatest danger is not to these areas. China is not going to be the one that's going to shut down these lanes. So this idea that Japan is coming in and helping ASEAN protect itself against a non-existent threat is very, very worrisome.
But it's also a lifeline for other countries that are using the South China Sea as major trade routes,
including
right?
Japan.
Including Japan, including some other regional countries. What is really the best way to help keep the so-called freedom of navigation in that area? Is to equip everybody with more advanced destroyers or area carriers, or really to sit down and talk to each other, Dr. Law?
In fact, at present in South China Sea, nobody challenges the freedom of navigation. At present, we see American warship or American ships or US ships or the Japanese ships, China ships. The ships from all the countries, they can go free in South China Sea at present. So it's not a problem. So the problem is, I think we need the regional security framework to accommodate China, US, Japan, and ASEAN countries' interest. So I strongly said that we need the ASEAN Plus 8 defense dialogue. At present, we have the ASEAN Plus 6 defense minister dialogue. So we need to promote the ASEAN Plus 8 defense minister dialogue to make a realized defense framework for the both countries to cooperate in the region.
But is the process developing, or is it stalled at this moment? I mean, we are obviously not seeing this kind of coordinated efforts to come to a joint code of conduct where everybody abide by the same rules, but rather, you know, I want to go there, I want to talk to your friends, come and buy my weapons. Is that what we're seeing at this moment?
Yeah. ASEAN Plus 8 defense minister dialogue, we have already had it, but the problem is different countries, they have different targets. The problem is there. So, but I think China has its answer to the question. That is, China proposed a win-win situation. We need the community of shared future, which means that even though we have different national interests in the region, we need to sit down to provide public goods to the region, rather than the Japanese or the US to launch the warship in South China Sea to disturb peace and stability.
Yeah, but I mean, the big elephant in the room here is the South China Sea issues and the disputes that are going on there, and then the Belt and Road Initiative. These are not necessarily going in the same direction. There has to be some sort of resolution to that. I think China is moving forward. 2 days ago, they proposed a new code of conduct for ships that are operating in that area. They've also scheduled a lot of meetings. The question is, what kind of things are being pushed? For instance, the recent meeting of generals between Vietnam and China was abruptly canceled, mostly, I think, because of these issues of territorial. Obviously, with India, there are things there. So I think as China moves into the Belt and Road Initiative, and it becomes one of the more powerful initiatives, it has to resolve this issue of what is actually in things. But I agree with you. More warships and militarization is not going to help the situation.
Is there going to be a situation, a point of balance where both China, the United States, Japan, and other smaller regional countries can coexist peacefully without flexing their muscle all the time?
I think to some extent it depends on United States. Why I say like that? For example, we talk too much about the COC, Code of Conduct. Even though when ASEAN and China finalized the Code of Conduct this year.
States?
Yeah, because US not signed the COC. So when we finish the COC, but US warship come here, how should we respond?
Well, this is the problem. And right now, because of the Donald Trump administration, nobody knows exactly how he's going to respond. He runs hot and cold on a daily basis. He says she's his friend, but he's losing patience. On North Korea, nobody domestically or internationally can judge what he's going to do. So until there is a substantial change or a real policy that's being in effect, yes, it's going to be very difficult. But China has to look at its neighbors. Its Belt and Road Initiative is too important to be left behind or to the vagaries of whether the U.S. wants to support it or not.
There's also the element of India here, because on Itsumo's schedule there is also a joint naval exercise with Indian and U.S. naval vessels in the Indian Ocean in July. What kind of role is India playing here, and what is their interest, Dr.
I think for long years, India is very important in the region, but India is not a challenger to the Southeast Asian security, to be frank, because India's national interest is focused on the Indian Ocean. Even though India has the naval exercises with ASEAN countries, but India never take initiative to challenge China in East Asia region.
Yeah, that was before. This quadrilateral agreement, which is Australia, India, Japan, and the U.S. that is trying to be put together, is supposed to be a doorstop against the growth of China going forward. So if India chooses that path, it'll be interesting. The problem is that the U.S. wants India to do all of these things. India feels strongly about some territorial issues, but there's no future in it for India. The U.S. is not prepared to kind of help India with the kind of infrastructure that they need to build up their economy. They're a fast-growing economy, but that is going to stall unless they make the necessary improvements so that they can get goods to markets.
Well, some experts or some scholars in India are actually looking quite positive at the kind of relationship the United States is going to have with India under Trump, because they say it is in the United States' interest to have a good relationship with India as it's trying to counter China's rising influence.
We would be happy to sell them arms and things, but the question is, do they need arms or do they need infrastructure?
And for the United States, I think the Trump government, maybe they focused on the Northeast Asia rather than Southeast Asia. The US government now, I think, pay more attention to the DPRK and maybe pay more attention to the Japan-US alliances rather than the US-India relations.
Yeah, but Modi and Trump are meeting. So
yeah. But nevertheless, yes, everybody will continue pursuing whatever is in their personal or national interest and will not stop simply because it is not their priority. But anyway, thank you very much, gentlemen. Dr. Loren Khan, an associate professor at the China Institute of Contemporary International Relations, and Aina Tangen, as always, our current affairs commentator. Thank you very much. And here is my first point. Now, China's position on Japan's military moves is very clear. Over the past year, China and the countries involved in disputes over the ownership of islands in the South China Sea have improved their relationship through dialogue and concerted efforts made on both sides to come to an understanding on the way forward. But Japan appears to want to cause splits in this new improved relationship for its own personal gains. As China's foreign ministry has reiterated, the Japanese are not a party concerned in the South China Sea, and they have a disgraceful history of occupying China's Shisha and Nansha Islands during its war of aggression against China. So the Japanese should really reflect upon this chapter in their history and stop making waves in the South China Sea and impairing regional peace and stability. Whatever spin the Japanese government has been giving out for their actions in the South China Sea, it doesn't wash with the Chinese, who are simply taking those explanations with a pinch of salt. For centuries, the four great inventions of ancient China contributed greatly to global civilization. Today, new technologies are forever shortening the physical and cultural differences between different parts of the world. In a video that went viral online, foreign students in China have redefined the great four inventions of the modern age: bike-sharing services, e-commerce, high-speed trains and mobile payment systems. These are the things they most want to bring back to their home countries. Now, the concept of bike sharing is hardly new. Actually, it was the Dutch who originally came up with the idea. But how have the Chinese reinvented it to the point where it's now a very Chinese phenomenon? Will it have a global impact like the ancient Chinese inventions? I'm very pleased to be joined in the studio by Michelle Chen, Chief Product Officer of market leader OFO. Michelle, thank you very much for joining us. Can you count the number of competitors you have?
Good question.
With both hands?
There's a saying that the color, we have already run out of the color, right? I would say that it's good to see the competition. It's a testimonial to see there's a huge market opportunity that users are really looking forward to companies that can solve their last kilometer, last mile problem.
Sure.
So competition is a great thing. It actually makes all the players provide the best service to customers. I really see competition is actually the best thing for the industry. Ultimately, no matter who wins, the consumer will be the winners, the society, the public, right? So as we see more competitions, we all compete to be even better, because if we're already the dominant one and there's no one compete, it's natural to actually be complacent. But the fact that we have more newcomers, we look at their apps, their experience, we make our bikes better, our apps better. So for the most part, I think that's competitions make the industry better, make the consumers better off, and then even as a company, we grow because of competition.
Let me tell you, I'm a regular user of OFO, and I do have something to feedback. For instance, I find it very convenient, very nice, very good. That's all fine. But oftentimes, there are so many of these bikes that when I get off the bike and become a pedestrian, I find it very annoying. You can't simply walk freely on the street anymore. You must have a lot of complaint about that. What do you do about that?
First of all, appreciate the feedback you are giving. While it is a concern that we are aware of, to be honest, it hasn't been a huge concern, like a feedback from customers.
Of course, for the customers, they care for convenience, right? The pedestrians will not talk to the O-bike or the bike-sharing companies about their concerns.
The reality is that even the pedestrians, they're users as well, right? So what we try to do is we do want to encourage our users to be more thoughtful, but at the same time, it's something that the society needs to overall encourage people to be better citizens. To us as a company, it's more the encouragement that we can do to foster a better behavior that people have in general.
How do you do that? I mean, I understand you don't really have any outreach except some stickers on the bike. If you're under 12, for instance, don't use these bikes, or don't put your kid in a basket in front of the bike. Although I constantly see people putting their kids or sometimes girlfriends in the basket. How do you educate these people to behave properly as a biker, to use these bikes properly, take care of these bikes, and respect the public rules?
So as you said, we mentioned in the on the bike, right, encourage people to not to put their kids in the basket through the app and through some of the advertising and the PR things that we do. We try to encourage them to behave better. At the same time, I would say that this is something that we want to encourage the public to actually join forces with us, and that's something we would love to also with other players in the industry. It's a joint effort that we are happy to lead, but we need everyone to do it together so that we can behave better.
Absolutely, this is going to be a collective effort. How about the feedbacks you have gotten from users in other continents? You know, when you go global, are you using the same model of operation as you're using here in China?
Yeah, so good question. First of all, we just started, so we are at the pretty early stage learning about what are the needs, how different they are in different continents. The feedback we got so far is...
Where are you, by the way?
Yeah, so great. So we are already in Singapore, UK, US as well. So it's pretty exciting place to be. So the feedback we usually get is people really welcoming station-free bike sharing. As you probably know that bike sharing with stations already in certain places, but we invented the station-free bike sharing. And then just anecdotally, right, in San Francisco, people actually use the bike that's already there, but because they have to find the station, which is a hassle, so people are really looking forward the station-free bike sharing. The kind of things that's going to be slightly different, one common thing is that payment, right? So people use different payment methods in different places, but for the most part, people's needs is globally the same.
Of course.
We are looking for convenience, affordability.
Well, one of the reasons why bike sharing is so popular is precisely because of the prevalence of smartphones, of GPS, of 4G technology, and with fintech. Right, you have the convenience of payment.
Exactly.
What about in those cities where you might not have as developed a fintech system as in China? Does that work as well? And plus also, let's not forget the relatively smaller markets you're looking at in other countries.
Yeah, so I used to work at Uber, right? So the mindset similar here is that when we enter these countries, right, and then if they don't have the well-structured infrastructure, then we will go and then work with the local people or the other corporations to find a way to actually solve that problems. So by the time that if we do enter a country, as you said, that does not have as well-established fintech as some developed countries, we'll work with the local players.
What are some of the innovative solutions you have come up with? With credit card or with coins, or how does it work?
Good question. I know that we are working with, for example, Thailand is a place that we are working, we are trying to enter, and we're working with some local players there as well.
What about regulatory hurdles? Do you foresee any of these? On the streets of Beijing at this moment, do you already have regulations placed in front of you from the municipal government?
Yeah, so the one thing I actually have been very pleasant to see is that by large, most governments actually welcoming us because we're really solving a problem for the citizens, right? With that said, because it's a new industry, when something new happens, the government wants to make sure that it's doing it properly. So we're working collaboratively with various governments to establish or help them form the kind of regulation or rules, right? So that not only at the end of the day it's about providing service to consumer, but at the same time make it easy for government to actually understand and then manage us in the most effective way.
This is also something quite new for the governments as well. When you go into a different country, what about the legal and same question, the regulatory hurdles that you have to overcome? I guess in some other better developed countries, the legal requirements would be higher. Or not?
It's interesting. So I spent many years in the US and I also worked in Europe and Asia as well. It depends, right? So again, I actually see that more and more government, they are focusing on their citizens. They want to do what's good for their citizens. So it's a fine balance they want to see is to welcome innovation, but still do it in a way that's manageable to them. So I would say that for the most part, we have experience. It's more a question that they have that they want to understand because they've seen the phenomenal growth in China, and then they've, as you mentioned, the 4 new inventions, right? Like most foreigners want to bring back to their home countries. So it's more a curiosity and something they want to understand than in trying to find regulations to, stop or block any of us.
Eventually, very briefly, is this going to be a sustainable solution to a lot of the last mile problem countries have?
We hope so, yes.
Thank you very much, Michelle Chen, Chief Product Officer of OFO. And whether or not bike sharing could be a new Chinese invention for the world is actually irrelevant to me. My question is whether this is going to be a great invention for the Chinese people. As a regular user, I have high praise for the convenience it has brought me, plus the potential environmental benefits, even the health implications when people prefer biking than driving more and more. On the other hand, often when I need a bike, I still couldn't find it easily enough. Do we need more shared bikes on the streets? From a personal point of view, maybe yes, but from a social point of view, that would be a disaster. As always, it all comes down to our individual responsibility as a citizen. Park the bikes where they belong, wait for the traffic lights, take care of yourself and others and the bikes while using it. If everyone makes a small effort, bike sharing could be a great new invention for the Chinese people, at least. That's all for this edition of The Point. As always, follow me on Twitter or visit our Facebook page using the handle The Point with Alex. Download the application called CGTN Live to watch our show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Have a good weekend and join me on Monday again. As always, you got the point.